Good morning and welcome to the new edition of my live comments. Asia as a continent, especially East Asia and now South Asia, part of South Asia, have come in news recently for something amazing. A religion which is known to be extremely peaceful, which preaches and practices non-violence. There's a difference between practice and preaching. But this is one religion that preaches non-violence and practices non-violence, whose leader is present leader, Dalai Lama, is quoted all the time archetypally as a leading peaceful icon of the world, whose founder, Gautam Buddha, left such an impact on the society that the most ferocious warriors, when they came under the impact of Buddhism, chose to be peaceful, non-violent, and renounced war. And many historians say that the downfall of India began when Buddhism crept in, because it sapped the martial spirit of the Indians. Well, I will not go into that, but I'm really concerned that this stereotype was demolished with the rise of the violence in Buddhism and its rhetoric. It's very difficult to understand why there has been a 180-degree shift in the vision of Buddhism. Has Buddhism changed, or have some fringe groups taken on themselves the need to fight those people who are destroying the icons of Buddhism, like Bamani statues in Kabul? Or it's a revenge for the lost empire in Malaysia and Indonesia, which were at one time the citadels of Buddhism and now are the citadels of Islam? Last 2 weeks, the government of Sri Lanka has been convulsed with the anti-Muslim riots led by the Buddhist mobs. Many people died, and more than 200 Muslim-owned establishments are in ruins. And that's the latest bout of Muslims being victims of violent Buddhism. The situation worsened to such an extent that the government of South Asian country Sri Lanka was constrained to impose a state of emergency. Before that, ultra-nationalist monks, led by a firebrand preacher Virathu, in Myanmar, earlier Burma, had a crackdown on the Muslim population, and they cheered a military crackdown on nearly 700,000 Rohingyas who were made to leave Myanmar and go to the other world, because they could not live in that country any longer. I'm not denying, as I earlier wrote, that Rohingyas had extraterritorial loyalty. But I'm talking about the change in the psyche of Buddhism from Sri Lanka to Burma is not in long road. And next is Thailand, where a prominent Buddhist monk called for his followers to burn down the mosques. What has prompted this change? The normally peaceful, saffron-wearing monks now adopting a very aggressive rhetoric tone, which is so often at odds with our religion. I have been to Buddhist viharas I laid the foundation stone of the Buddhist Vihara in Mississauga. I love them. I love their preachings. I love their teaching. I find a peace when I go to Buddhist Vihara. The monks are highly educated, eclectical, secular in mind and character. So when I read those news, it did disturb me. We always have been schooled in Buddhism via beatniks, Hollywood, meditation classes, tropical holidays, inspirational quotes of Dalai Lama. And the visceral attitude and response of these monks comes as a shock. I was talking to Professor Jerrison at Youngstown University, Yale University, and he says that Buddhism and violence throughout history have been like that, and they have used violence to justify their existence. They have justified their religion, that their religion needs protection. There's a common mindset, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it's Myanmar, whether it's Thailand, that Buddhism is under threat. And the latest threat can be seen from the incantation and incarnation of response. Each area where Buddhists have become enraged and angry and violent have their own causes and their own instigators, but they're all interlinked. Aggression has been targeted against Muslims and Muslims alone, and not against Hindus, not against Jains, not against Sikhs, not against Christians, not against Jews. Why? As a matter of fact, after the Taliban destruction of Bamiyan statues in Afghanistan and war on terror rhetoric, the warped historical grievances collided with recent Islamophobia. The old wounds became alive. And when the old wounds become alive, then the result is an outlet for the emotions which have been suppressed for a long time. Despite centuries of peaceful coexisting and trading, Buddhism fundamentalist groups have come to realize that the rabid Islamic movement expressed in Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and ISIS, nowhere else, and especially the destruction of the statues, Bamiyan statues, have been a reason for concern. These Buddhist fundamentalist groups portray Islam as invasive, toppling ancient Buddhist empire in Malaysia and Indonesia, and are now threatening Buddhist nations. How? Through jihad and high birth rate. Now, these are the two common factors which make Indians wary of Islam. They forget that Muslims can be asked, persuaded to adopt family planning, and as a matter of fact, educated Muslims do not have large families. But look at the other side. Indians also, the Hindus, like Lalu, have families of 13 children, 11 children. Vivi Giri had 13 children, Lalu has 11 children. But they pick and choose. So the Buddhists are saying that they are a minority in Myanmar, they are a minority in Sri Lanka, they were a minority in Malaysia, they were a minority in Indonesia. And because of their covert conversion and rapid birth rate, they became a majority in Indonesia, and that's a country today with the largest Muslim population in the world. They became a majority in Malaysia, and Malaysia, which was a Buddhist empire, became a Muslim empire. So they are afraid that the same thing might happen in Myanmar and in Sri Lanka. This is the fear of being overwhelmed and overcome by a growing population that has at the same time groups which are violent as conveyed by the current jihadists. So the peaceful intent was replaced by a sense of self-security. And when your self is threatened, then you take up arms. So Myanmar's Viratu had built a following, a great following against Muslims in sermons, and they used both in person and Facebook. Incidentally, the Facebook of Viratu was closed down 2 months back. Now, Muslims today make less than 4% of Myanmar's population. But the Viratu had shown that they, with a growing population rate, while the Buddhist growth rate is 1.2% in Myanmar, the growth rate of Rohingyas was 7 to 8%. So they said within a few years they'll become the majority. He started a group called Mi Ba Tha group. This is pushing the laws to restrict interfaith marriages and changing religion. They want to make it like in Islam, you cannot change the religion. If you are an apostate, you are killed. They say the same should be applicable to the Buddhists, that in case they change their religion, they should be destroyed, they should be killed. And there should be no interfaith marriages. In Islam, if a Hindu girl goes to Muslim house, ordinarily, she has to convert. As in Roman Catholics, if a Roman Catholic marries a non-Catholic, then the children have to be Catholic. Sri Lanka's military tendency has gone mainstream, and clergy are seen fighting even with the riot police. And they are not bothered about the anti-government procession. There has been a brutal 26 years of war in Sri Lanka. Earlier, the targets of the Buddhists were the Tamil Hindus. Now the focus has changed from Tamil Hindus to Islam. And the most prominent leader, monk Galgadate Gansara, he is on bail for murder and everything. And he said very clearly that Quran should be banned. He quoted 173 verses of Quran which call for conversion of non-believers into Islam and killing of kafirs. His movement, BBS, the Buddhist force, is very strong. In Thailand, anti-Muslims have had less success. Sastri Akchai says that the years of corruption have undermined the authority of Buddhist monks in Indonesia and in Thailand. But the very fact in this belt, starting from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, there have been flashes, even in Malayan Muslim majority South. More than 6,500 civilians killed in 10 years. And most of the dead are Muslim civilians. But then nobody can deny that the Buddhist monks have also been targeted by militants, fueling further animosity towards Islam. There's a young monk, Maha Aripach, and he says that the Buddhist clergy is forced to trigger violence, but it does not directly participate in that. They don't carry out violence themselves. As a matter of fact, the whole movement is Buddhist protectionist. It's a self-protection, that's what they say. And it's not only global Islamophobia that is fueling these groups. The colonial history, globalization, and advance of secularism play their part. These Buddhists feel that their traditions are in danger, and that danger can only be solved by restricting the impact of the outsiders. Earlier, they were afraid of communism. You remember in the height of 1970s, Thailand's most prominent right-wing monks told followers it's no sin to kill the communists. And now there's no sin to kill the Buddhists. By labeling Buddhists as adversaries to Buddhism, Islam as which has historically not been true, its study solidifies the opposition to Islamists and fueled by the fundamentalists in Islam. The damage has been done. There's a breakdown of trust, and the fears are being built. And as I always say, fear is the black godmother of all damnable things. This change which is happening in Sri Lanka and in Burma, simmering in Thailand, resentment in Malaysia and Indonesia, is a keg of dry powder and it can explode. But I'm amazed. The world politicians have not raised a cry about this. UNO is silent, and all the so-called champions of human rights are silent now. Why? There's a need to ensure that secularism does not mean forced conversion. There's a need to tell people that everybody's traditions are safe. There's need for all groups to realize the need of coexistence rather than co-destruction. Co-destruction would only mean ultimate annihilation of good values that are espoused by Buddhism. Let's remove the fears of Buddhism so that this beautiful non-violent religion can lead the world in the matter of coexisting, living together, and not fighting together with each other. Thank you.